Just being part of the family, first of all. Being part of the Wilson family, the Wilsons. Like the Jackson 5, we were the Wilsons. My parents sacrificed a lot. Who is Fatima Wilson or Fatima Wilson? Growing up, I grew up in a musical family. From early on, all I can remember is playing pan in the basement. And it was between playing pan or going outside. And half of the time, the playing pan won. My father taught all of us. It was something that was given to us as a gift that we can't that we can't decline.
Today I'm sitting here with my son, my second eldest son, and my daughter, one of my daughters, from 6 children, and 2 of my grandkids out of 12. And we are known as the steel pan family in Montreal because that's what we've been doing for those 50 years. Well, first of all, with the family, we established our own family group, and we introduced it to the communities, the Côte-de-Neige community and the NDG community. And then we took it into the public schools. Today it's in Fatima's hands, and she's doing an excellent job.
I'm not the greatest in French, so I do try my best. When it comes to clients that only speak French, you feel that you're already going to be judged because you're responding, I'm sorry, my French isn't the greatest. Is it okay to speak French? Is it okay to speak English? It's a business, and when they see the art and if they appreciate the art, I don't think they should have a problem that I speak English. To be Dr. Sala Wilson's daughter? Oof. Oh boy. Just being part of the family, first of all. The Wilson family, the Wilsons. Like the Jackson 5, we were the Wilsons. My dad never stopped letting us know that education is important. Making sure we were the best people that we can be. And also with our music. He was very adamant about that. Made sure that we went to the McGill Conservatory for Music. I wasn't a pan player. When I was younger, I used to call it a baby doctor. It's just something about helping kids and just being part of their lives. I wasn't the greatest in high school. I wasn't the best in math and physics and so on. Kind of took that off the list that, I think that's not going to be something for me anymore. So the next thing that I had, I said, well, I know music. And I know that my father teaches in the schools, and I had to teach a few times. And I said, well, this could be something, and that's that's the history from there. The sweat and tears, lugging all the pans, doing all the shows, the Christmas shows, winter festivals that we used to host, and out of pocket. There was no funding. It was out of pocket. It's a job, right? It's not a 9-to-5 job. There's some times where you're going to be getting gigs every day. And then there's sometimes you're going to get a gig maybe once or twice a week. When you have to charge a certain amount because you know your worth, but that to some, they think it's too much. All I could remember about Carnival at times, unfortunately, is the politics. I mean, you have people enjoying themselves, the costumes and so on. But behind the scenes, I remember my father had the conversations that I heard, they weren't so nice, unfortunately. And if it's about keeping the culture alive, keeping pan alive, and everybody else's, or there's certain people that had a different agenda, he didn't want any part of it.
it's all about a family. The journey is a family itself, you know. And this is life, basic life. The concept of life is really family. My father, he was a mechanic, but I don't know how to change a tire. You know, so I told myself, whatever I'm doing, I'm gonna make sure that I pass it on to my child.
Just trying to keep what my father did, and he wanted it to have an accredited academy, accredited school. So that's my thing that I'm trying to do for him as well. I went back to school as well during COVID to be able to have my degree so that I could be accredited teacher in the schools. As of now, we are in Coronation Elementary, Marymount Academy, Westmount Park, St. Monica, and John Grant. And John Grant is a school for students with learning disabilities. So some of our students, majority of our students there are, nonverbal. They have autism. So it's a different kind of teaching, but this is where I appreciate what I do, because I have a group of students from again, nonverbal with autism, and the amount of music and what they provide and what they produce and to perform, it just blows me away.
Like I said, I grew up in this village, and there was this steel band, and it was the most important thing, you know.
It's a unity, you know. It brought everybody together, no matter how far we are from each other. This is something that we'll always have. I was acknowledged in the Black History Month laureate. It was I was very appreciative of that. And, it's just being able to do this on a regular basis as my job. That's all I can ask for.
Whatever they want to do when they grow up, that's fine.
If I were to ask my grandpa if I wanted to learn the pan, he would jump off out of bed and he would just take me downstairs, and he would teach me a few things, and then we would take a few breaks, and then we would keep it going again.
Grandpa means family to me. He's nice, he's funny, and he's loving, and very peaceful.
I would like to pass on to my children, because that's the next generation. That's who I would like, and I hope that what I did and what I'm doing, it leaves a mark for them. You know, that I'm not just playing an instrument. You know, it's an art, and I hope I showed them something that they're able to continue.
When people hear the name Fatima Wilson, how do you want to be remembered?
A mother that just tried to provide for her children.
Growing up in Hong Kong, people always ask you very practical questions. It's like, if you go to art school, what you going to do in the future? My parents we work in the market. We have a small business in the wet market. So they're always like, what you going to do with your life if you study art or something like that. My name is George Falk. Sometimes I'm a new media artist and doing video installation or digital art or things like that. In an easier way, you can say I'm a multidisciplinary artist. So I've been in design and advertising for like good over 20 years as a creative director, and then branched into film production, and I always like to be hands-on in my project. So eventually I do quite a bit of production, like photography, videos, or even motion design, compositing, and animation, anything that looks great. So I grew up in Hong Kong and in the early 70s. So it's a very different place compared to right now. When I grew up, it was still called British Hong Kong. So we grow in a very dense city with around 8 million people populations. But you kind of grow up in a childhood that we have many people around you because it's such close proximity. And my family run a little small business in the market. When I was a kid, I loved those Japanese manga, all the stuff that they broadcast on television. At that time, it's the 80s and 90s, a lot of British pop like the Depeche Mode, the Joy Division, and then the punk music, that was a huge movement. My parents we work in the market. We have a small business in the wet market. So they're always like, what you going to do with your life if you study art or something like that. But then I look at the application from the Polytechnic school program. There's something called graphic design. And at that time, I have a bit of understanding what graphic design is and what you can do as a career. So I kind of like, this is what I wanted to do. Oh, there's this program available in Canada. And they kind of give us an introduction. They say, this is a slightly different than Toronto city. It's a French-speaking city, but somehow you can get by in English a little bit. So basically, I go through the phone book or some kind of like guide called the Designer Association in French. I look at all the agency names and just like basically, I go through all the names. I print a little bit of like postcard with a little bit of my portfolio in it. Just insert the card via little cover letters, send 50, 60 cards out and see what's going on. And basically, I say, I can't sit on my ass, so I have to do something about it. So I really want to work. I'm really, like, it's just like, in Hong Kong, I really aspire to be a graphic designer at the time. So I really want to work in this new environment. So basically, I started cold calling the agency, the people that send cards to them. Sometime I got a little bit of a cold shoulder because I don't speak French at the time. So it was a little bit of like, it's not easy, but just keep going and keep going. I have very interesting feeling. At some point, in the beginning, I'm very curious about it. I met some really interesting people. At some point, I have a little bit of frustration also. Kind of rejected the Quebec culture a little bit, I complained a little bit about it. But then I came to a realization. It was actually, all those letters I sent, I only got 2 replies. The reply are negative. I said, thank you, but we don't have opening. So it's like a miracle. Looking back, and think there's like a higher power kind of watching over your shoulder. You kind of feel like that. Yeah. Interesting enough, there's this agency called Tam Tam, and it's known to be a very kind of like a rebel of advertising and stuff like that. I called them on one Friday evening, and one of the founders picked up the phone and said, I'm a designer from Hong Kong. Like, would you mind take a look at my portfolio? I just want to get some of your opinion. So I said, you know what? Let's do it. So I took the bus from South Shore, from Brossard. I came to downtown Montreal at the corner of my hand in St. Denis. Pierre saw my portfolio. He really likes it. And I think he found it exotic. There's a little bit of Japanese influence, a little bit of Cantonese influence, a little bit of Chinese and British. So it's like an interesting mixture, but they didn't have any opening. But he told me, like, you know what? We didn't have any opening for you, but there's this guy, my another partner. He's opening a design department downstairs. So he might be interested to hire you. So Steve saw my portfolio, and at that time they started with just two persons, Steve and Danielle. And Danielle is on vacation in Paris. So they need someone to kind of like replace him during his vacation. So I got the gig. That's how I started to work as a graphic designer. I did a lot of like packaging design. Occasionally we did advertisings, like, you know, typography, image, photography integration. After working 2 years in that space with Danielle and Steve, Steve actually have some personal challenge. He decided to not to continue the design studio. It was me and Danielle at the time. And we look at each other, what are we gonna do? We're like, Steve said, you know what? This is a space, this is machinery. You guys can continue and you don't have to pay me right away with all this gear and rental, this space, whatever. I have very little experience. I've been working in that place for only 2 years. And Danielle said, why not? Just grab it, you know, we'll see. Business were good at some point. And then after the 2000, the .com is a little bit of history. Some of our clients, you know, went down, and then we kind of lose a big percentage of income. Then we have this offering, they merge with another agency, which is more advertising driven. It's a very bad idea. It's not a very good idea. 6 to 9 months, the whole thing was dissolved. I was a little bit in the down, actually, don't know where to go with my career at that time. Same as Dan, we just basically, you know, we throw our towel, you know what, you guys have fun. And then Dan was hustling in the Singapore hotel there. He met the founder of the Five Center. At that time, she was looking for a creative team. She actually came from a theater, art, and cultural background. We became the early employee of that organization. That art and cultural organization kind of became a big, huge establishment. And it's another growth in my life. I kind of being exposed to the milieu of contemporary art. I'm able to slowly go from that world and have a peek into the art world, what it looks like. But around 2015, they got this project called Leonard Cohen, A Crack in Everything. A lot of major artists was invited on the table as a group shows. Montreal artists, international artists, high caliber, but they are missing a piece that talk about Leonard's life using all the archival footage, kind of documentary driven. A call from Victor, the guest curator, Victor Schiffman and John, say, you know what, we think you're the right person to do this piece. And at that time, I don't have any history doing installation work. They kind of see the talent in me. And I was kind of a little bit freaking out. I was like, really? I look at the material, I was like, maybe this is not, are you sure you have the right person? They kind of insist, you have to do it, it's you. And we basically went through the entire archive of Leonard Cohen and all this commercially created televised footage or interview he has. So it's a Goldilocks of contemporary, of video installation, documentary, filmmaking, and a bit of experimental. The project actually got picked up by other institutions. So it started in Montreal, and then it went to New York, the Jewish Museum, and then it went to Denmark. And Denmark, my piece, we went into 2 locations, and then went to San Francisco. I knowing myself, it became the flagship project of my life, you know.
The time has come for bad things to end. The time has come for life to begin. The time has come for the war of the
I think you always go through that internal struggle of trying to create art that's going to be that's going to create some kind of, financial income for you. But at the same time, you just do your thing and you don't give a fuck. Yeah, so I'm a local Montrealer, born and raised in the city, 46 years old. Grew up loving art. Growing up in the Indian culture, you have a certain way of a certain way of doing things. And then trying to, fit into culture in the West was a little different. You always had those two worlds kind of colliding and competing for domination in your mind. Grew up, coming to my dad's business. My dad started this business over 40 years ago. And originally it was a t-shirt shop. My dad used to sell rock t-shirts, heavy metal t-shirts. And we started doing tattoos and piercings here in the 90s. And eventually I decided that I wanted to start doing tattoos as well. So I taught myself how to tattoo. I remember taking a lot of trips with my dad when I was a kid, and he would go to New York just to go pick up different gear from Canal Street and whatnot. And I remember just seeing the graffiti, the bright colors, the loud, just the beauty of graffiti. And it kind of impacted what I was into growing up, and then kind of got into comics, more graphic art, and then eventually tattooing. My dad kind of just, stumbled into the business. He didn't really have a love for t-shirts. He was an immigrant businessman that came into the country with literally $200 in his pocket, and did what he had to do to put food on the table for his family.
You've been the best at times. You walk me through my darkest days. Why must I turn around?
A lot of tattoo artists actually come from the graffiti background. It's kind of interconnected in a weird way. Graffiti is a weird culture. It's like a subculture within a subculture. And it was amazing. It gave me that sense of camaraderie, brotherhood, with a lot of my buddies growing up, where we would, look for ways to just do what we wanted to do. Well, I definitely feel like Montreal's my city, but with that being said, I've always thought about expanding the business. I'm here for now, so I'm kind of concentrating on what I'm doing right now. But no, definitely, I feel what you're saying. It's so vibrant compared to any other Canadian city when it comes to art. We have such a diverse, music scene, visual art scene. It's definitely an artistic city. Obviously, dealing with the city or even government sometimes isn't the easiest thing for an Anglophone. A lot of the services and a lot of, just what you have to deal with the people it's usually in French. Mind you, I do speak French, parle français vraiment bien. I'm actually trilingual. I speak Punjabi as well. I've met a lot of ignorant people in this industry. I've met a lot of ignorant people just in general. And I never let them get me down. I mean, you're gonna meet them in any industry. You're gonna meet them anywhere you are. You just gotta remember that you have a dream, you have a goal, and nothing's gonna stop you at the end of the day. If I were to say there are two things that my dad taught me, A, hard work, and 2, just know how to pay your bills. That's one thing that tattooing has taught me. It's literally be in the moment when you're doing what you're doing. And I'm sure you feel that way too when you're in that flow of artistic expression. Nothing else in the world matters. You're just literally in the moment doing what you love. Yeah, it was a struggle in the beginning to get the business rolling. But I always had this level of, okay, I know how to pay my bills. I know how to allocate money to things that are important. And I just went from there. And I think it's all interconnected in a weird way where you have, like I said, culture experiences that kind of taint your perspective on what you want to express artistically. I'm sure you've felt that as well. And I know I have definitely, I'm really inspired by a lot of Indian art. Is it a part of my art? Absolutely. But that's the great thing about tattooing. It's it's progressed so much in the last little while where you have all these little elements that like you can take and create your own twist. I've definitely always had that rebel spirit, being the black sheep of my family. You know, just a little story. You know, my brothers were really growing up really heavy into the Punjabi culture. They were into the whole Bhangra music and whatnot. My family's from India, we're Punjabi, so Punjab being a province in India has a strong cultural ties to music and dancing. I never really felt it because I was born here. So growing up in Canada, Montreal, I was into rock music growing up as a kid. So I was always kind of like the black sheep in the family, playing guitar, growing up, listening to different music. My brothers would always make fun of me and be like, dude, you're not like us. What's up with you? You know what I mean? So I'd always hear it from my brothers. I'd always hear it from different friends. But that kind of just galvanized me and made me a stronger individual in having my own opinion about certain things. Yeah, and I always felt like I didn't want to be that stereotype. Just that stereotype of what people perceived, you know, a Punjabi guy to be. I never wanted to be that. So I guess just having that mindset kind of always made me seek different kinds of, you know, hobbies, things that I would be interested in. You know, it takes years to build something really good in life. And again, even with tattoos, you know, you have sessions where you can do an hour, 2 hours. Yeah, great. You can create like a little like piece that's really nice. The client will feel it, you'll like it. But then I've done pieces where it's taken like, you know, 10, 15 hours and you can create something really beautiful with the amount of time that you have. So, you know, if there's one thing that tattooing has taught me about life is put the work in. And, you know, Rome wasn't built overnight, like they say, right? It's funny that you say that because we kind of joke between like each other and we're always like, we always get that one customer who's always like throwing all their personal shit on you and you just gotta take it. You're just sitting there doing your job and you're absorbing all this energy from this client. I mean, mind you, some of it's positive, some of it's negative, but I think that's one of the most fun things about the job. I feel like I have such a good rapport with a lot of my clients where I do feel like I'm a therapist at certain times where I'm just like, okay, yo, how's your day? How you doing? What's going on? Tell me about your relationship. And, you know, at the end of the day, it does get kind of heavy. And, but yeah, no, it's definitely a really fun and unique part of the job. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I tell my daughter this every day. Having the right attitude in life is so important because, you know, you can literally have all the talent in the world and then have a shitty attitude and that's not going to take you far. Because I'm the kind of person that I had my dad tell me, hey, son, don't do this, don't do that, you know, do this. So I've heard a lot of these lessons, but I didn't take them to heart. I actually had to make the mistake of making them. Biggest misconception about me would probably be, I don't know, that's a good question. What is the biggest misconception about that? That I'm unfriendly, that I'm probably not a friendly person. I think there's a certain sense of beauty in like isolation and living a very simple yet meaningful life, cut off from the craziness of the modern day world, where you can just have yourself connected to, you know, a garden, a partner, just life itself, and be away from all this noise.
Slowly drifting away from me. I'm on the edge, so why you playing? I'm saying I will never ever let you live this down. Nothing, I've seen it, I dreamed it. I
Like rap is taking who you are and make it a superhero. Whether you are Kanye West who did Jesus Walks, he took Jesus and made it poppin'. I just think that's why he's so big. Rap is not following what's poppin'. Rap is taking you and making it poppin'. Okay, hi, my name is Troy Dunnett. I'm an MC out of Montreal, Canada. I've been doing music for a very long time. I've done work with A-Track, Maestro Fresh West, Solitaire. I mean, probably just about a good who's list of top Canadian artists in this country. I'm of Haitian descent. My mother and father are the only ones who came to Montreal. The rest of my family was in Boston, moved to Boston and New York. So I think it's an important piece of my story because I've always been like we had no cousins here, right? So I used to always go to New York and Boston twice a year, see the family. And I used to look up to my cousins. There was so much love. They were Haitian like me, but they were, they were right where it was at. So they gave me my first rap tapes. First time I heard Jay-Z, I remember it was my cousin who gave me, I think it was a tape at the time, 96. So it's important to see the connection of Haitian in Montreal, but even though I'm Haitian, I speak more English than French. The first rap song that I repeated, so I guess the first time I saw myself in an MC position was probably Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis. Like I performed that Biggie song on stage and it was like, not my song, but that was the first time I performed. Beyond that, I wanna say it's my homies. My homies were into it and you wanna fit in too. So I got into it then.
Far ahead of y'all, distant, different. Started way back, more persistent. Hands on your girl's ass.
So I lived in Chamonix-Laval, which is a suburb in Montreal, which is mostly new immigrants. You would have Greek people, but it wasn't a lot of Haitians. So I met a lot of dudes out there that I was cool with, but none of them looked like me. Later on, I moved to NDG. And NDG was the same thing, a lot of English, Caribbean. And once again, I was often the only Haitian. So even though I speak Creole and French, I also, rapping in English was not a random thing for me. Often I've heard, maybe you should try French, especially in Montreal. The scene is more open to that. But my story is a little bit more West Side Montreal. So I think one of the major hurdles with being an Anglophone artist in Quebec is the fact that it's not the main language spoken in Quebec. Like hip hop in Quebec today is way more Francophone because people want to hear themselves in their own story, in their own language. But for us, hip hop was not global to the point where we felt like it was a Montreal identity to rap. We were just part of that culture, part of that New York, LA, worldly rap culture, but we happened to be from Montreal. My first solo record, solo video was with Lotus. We did a video called New Flavor, and it played on Much Music, like, I don't say all day, but it was on Rap City consistently. Meanwhile, Music Plus, I messaged them, emailed them, I had to write emails, didn't get any responses. So I was kind of comfortable with the idea of chasing the world scene versus chasing the Montreal scene. We doubt ourselves. I think Quebec doubts ourselves. We were like, yo, English rapper, like I think in our own minds, it wasn't something that we could really grasp or connect with. When I first got into rap, my style was way more like the rappers that I listened to. So I listened to a song called Super Rappin', and I thought at the time I sounded like Jay-Z. I was a big fan, and I personally think I sounded like him. I always did me, which was usually punchlines. I want you to listen to my work. I want you as a rapper to wish you wrote that. My actual first rap group was Chromeo's Dave One. We went to school together, and it was, white Jewish dude and Haitian dude, and we were rapping. His younger brother, A-Track, he convinced him to just stay in the basement and just practice. So Obscure Disorder was my first story. Like I didn't really rap 3 years before that. So A-Track being the world champion DJ around us, it never felt like something to be, chest out about, because he was so humble about it. He was the world champion DJ and we almost forgot. Like years later, I'm like, I forget who I was around. We got into, I forget if it was Double XL or The Source. I forget, it's one of the two. We got into Double XL or The Source. And that that probably felt like the biggest moment, just because we all grew up, you know, Super Nintendo, like reading Word Up magazine, you know what I'm saying? Those magazines that were staples of the culture at the time. To me, the only way music success was achieved is with, you know, the top of the top. At 21, I realized I felt like Montreal had a ceiling for me. So I moved to New York. I moved to New York and I got caught up in life.
5/85. Narsey Nars. Done it.
Okay, Porter, I give up.
You 85, a part of the 5. The 10 run things. You living life or are you alive? It's two different things. It's rap shit.
You know, New York ain't a cheap city. You know, you understand if you make it there, you can make it anywhere. But I got caught up in life shit. And I started living and getting a little bit, I was doing less music. And around that time, we kind of all had separated paths. So A-Track went more into his DJing. I think he started working with Kanye at the time. Dave One and those guys started getting into funk. So I think moving to New York and life kind of distracted me. I was more concerned with living the life of a rapper, which was my life. You know, I was chilling, I was out there, I was living, even more than doing the songs. So I kind of got distracted by life, especially when I moved. Ironically, I moved to New York for music and I got distracted with life. I had no papers. Like, I'm a hustler, but at a young age, I wasn't much of a thinker. So when I moved there, it was, I don't know, a couple grand in my pockets and stayed on my cousin's couch. Thank God for Betty. And life got in the way, man. It's an expensive city. I got distracted also. Cuties out there in New York. And I was young, but everything happens for a reason. And I was meant to live. Because when I write music, it's all based off life. So I think I needed that experience. Like, yo, living 6 years with no papers. Wrote a song called Gangsters. Like, I literally don't give names out there, and I'm talking about how I was there with no papers. I had to go to banks to get checks or fake IDs. This is way too much, but it's 20 years later. I'm not gonna incriminate myself. I got back to music when, you know, got separated from my ex, was, you know, alone in the house, missed my kids, they weren't around me anymore, and art was my outlet.
You a numbers guy, I'm trying to hold the cup high. Davidson, Curry, McCullum, and Lahai. Been nice since baggy suits and fat ties, Fab Five.
So what I mean about my music being real, when I started doing music, it was about battle rapping because that's what was popping at the time and that's where I fit in terms of my personality. The last record I did was called Anti-Cupid. I had an interlude where at the time I lived in a duplex where the landlord lived downstairs. I was doing some funny things upstairs with some friends, female friend, whatever. It was loud and she called me, there's noise in the, what are you doing there? It's 5 a.m. That was my last record. And then my next record, 10 years later, is called After Love. Man, mildly broken, missing his kids, coming to grasp with the fact that his baby mama and him, it's alright. I'm not afraid to live my emotions. I think hip hop is very brave and very aggressive and very, you know, hold your nuts. But I think hip hop is real. First thing though, that I can think of that felt special is when we did a tour. So I think that's what it was. It makes sense, we were about 17. We were on tour, we went to the UK, did about 4 shows. I've done music with Maestro Fresh West, who's the first artist to go gold and platinum. I don't walk around chest out. I've done work with Mocha only, and these guys reached out to me. Like Maestro reached out to me on MySpace. Mocha reached out to me on Instagram. If you want to be the big fish in a small pond, that's on you. I've always understood that the pond that I wanted was the only pond, hip hop, where it's at. So to me, I look at Drake, and to me, whether you like the music or not, which I'm a fan of, he's a lyricist, he changed the dream of Canadian artists forever. Like I was in New York being from Montreal where they were like, oh, all right, where you from? Okay, all right. Like it always felt like being from Montreal was a little bit of a, something missing in your rap story. There's no mistakes, God makes no mistakes. I was supposed to live this life. I was supposed to take all these years to make it. I was supposed to. I was supposed to take that time, and whenever I wasn't writing, and I would have told young me, write more, sit in the studio, don't go on that date, save your money, shoot a video.
Never asked for money. Used to rock the Nefertiti, now I drop real jewelry, just give me opportunity. Yeah, Hand to hand is the lowest level. I can't teach you how to fish, but I'll bring you to the water, bro. I'll give you opportunity. Yeah. I told Crucial, long as I'm alive, we gon' be live. No, I knock it out the park, but I covered all the bases. I run all the guys. Points to points, right? Half the payroll, twice the fight. It's nothing is light. We've been through bloodier fights. Darker nights was an NY ducking ice. Real life, college dropout, school of life. If you ain't make it or they gave it, we are not alike. Nah, quick to strike, give me daylight. I get it out the plight. Made equal in 2020, only now they get the vision right. Security could be airtight.
I remember going to McGill and I was selling jeans, had a bag, selling jeans, and had another bag with my school stuff. So I'd be on campus selling jeans for $10 a pop, making 5 off of each of those jeans, because I had a buddy who used to get them off of a truck, right? And he would give them to me. That was the hustler in me. Ricky Daly. Yeah, just kind of a complicated guy. Has 2 sides to him. One side is the introvert, likes to be with himself. Doesn't like to be around too many people, shy. And then the other side of me is the extrovert that likes to do parties and be sociable and talk to all kinds of people. And yeah, it's like I'm a bit of both. Born and raised in Little Burgundy. My mother's family is from the Caribbean. My father is Italian. I was always attracted to the music, the latest records that were coming out back then. I had friends that were DJs, 2 of my closest friends at that time. So I was always around the music. And I wanted to, continue that. Eventually, I was listening to people like George Ravelin, UCLA, USC coach, basketball coach. I used to listen to his cassettes back then on my Sony Walkman. He always taught me that whatever you do, be the best at what you do, and fame and fortune will follow you. You gotta remember, right? Coming from this neighborhood, we didn't have a lot of things to be confident about. So you're basically written off. You're either gonna be a drug dealer, you're gonna rob purses, get into fraud, get into the quick way of living, especially if you hang around with certain types of individuals. Education wasn't really looked upon as a way out. Your street savvy and your smarts was the way that you would get to elevate yourself, at least financially at the beginning. When I started doing parties, it provided me with confidence. It provided me with completion. As an Anglophone Black, I was always at a disadvantage because the community I grew up with was leaving for greener pastures or what they perceive, whether it was New York, Toronto. Nightclubs and parties is some of the most discriminatory businesses you can get into, because it's all based on the crowd. So for example, you go to Cheers. You know that Cheers is going to be primarily white. It's going to be rock music. It's going to be a casual wear. There's going to be no cover, cheap beer, cheap brews. There's fights there. People are puking. People are carrying on. There's stabbings. Occasionally a shooting, depending on what's going on. If there's drugs being sold in the place, so forth, because these places happen. But the owners, who happen to be white, are generally more accepting of that because they knew that it was their community that was doing it. I was a person who at one stage in my life didn't complete things. So because I didn't complete things, there was always a lack of something I was missing. Eventually, by doing these parties, you have a beginning and an end, right? And at the end, you would see the results of what you would do. Your fruits of labor was evident in front of you. Like, wow, I'm involved in this. I helped to make this happen. I was a loser, pretty much. I was a loser, you know, destined to go to jail, do time, and grew up like a lot of the Black Anglophones that grew up in my neighborhood and other neighborhoods like this in the city. But that one opportunity to see myself as a person not only who accomplished things, but as a person who saw the results of my accomplishment, which is different, right? One of the worst parties is back in when I was younger, somebody got shot outside of my party. And, you know, and that was devastating for me, because nobody wants to be associated with something like that. I just believe that sometimes when you're hot, especially in those days, you attracted the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I first started off as a young man, working under, you know, people like the Keith and Karens and the Gary T's, and working with guys like Dr. Jam and the Wizard of Oz, I got to understand what the business was about. I took it more as a hobby. Hand out flyers at, you know, 2:30 in the morning till 4 o'clock in minus 15-degree weather. They weren't willing to do that, but I was. Malik Shahid, that's what he's known as now, and Butcher T, and also DJ Majest. Those guys have just always been around me because they understood my passion. They understood my commitment. And they understood that I don't give up. I was the kind of guy, I put the work in. Back then, you developed a one-on-one relationship with the people you were handing flyers to. You might not know everybody's name, but you knew mostly everybody's face, right? And you were always looking to expand that base. It was good times, you know, in terms of there was a real community involvement, a real involvement. Even if I didn't know you, you would always see me around. So you got a certain trust of knowing that, hey, if this guy is everywhere, his events must be popping. So I decided back then that I wanted to start to do old school parties. There was a resurgence of that in the States and in Toronto. And I decided that I was going to bring it here. Then I spoke to a buddy of mine named Gary Thompson. And I asked him, and I said, you know, because I did a lot of business with him when it came to producing shows and concerts. He was one of my mentors who brought me into that side of the business, because I was known more as a party promoter and hip hop promoter, but he brought me into the concert side of things. And I decided that I was going to continue in that realm. We were one of the first Anglophone promotion companies to work extensively, not only with the Black Anglophones, but with the Haitian and African community, by incorporating different promoters and different DJs who would bring different types of music, like, for example, compa and, you know, and zouk. And, you know, sometimes I sit in a party and I'm there people would just come up and say, yo, thank you, man. And I'd be like, wow, this is deep. Thank you for doing what you have done for us. And it's such a huge, it's really deep. It's such a deep feeling to be known that you're appreciated. People appreciate you. Sorry. Let me take that over. Nothing But the Funk was a great one that I did years ago. We were doing over 2,000 people a party. We had 3 different rooms. I got the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Gala Dynasty, where they prepared a segment dedicated to my life. I also was in the calendar, the Black History Month calendar. Had a month assigned to me. I can't remember the month though. Produced shows from the Sweet Mickeys to the Class. Sometimes I'd be the only Anglophone in some of these Haitian shows. It was just in me. Just like some people are born tall, some people are born short, some people are more negative, and some people are more positive. Some people are smarter, some people are dumber. It just was in me, man. It's just something that I realized. And what brought that out of me was that feeling of accomplishment. Without that, I would have been maybe in jail, maybe dead, or living a life of mediocrity. God created all human beings as equal. But what God did is give people choices, the power of choice.